Cowboy risks his rescued dying Apache girl, and she warmed his lonely heart. Jack Rains had always been a man of the plains. He rode alone most of the time, following trails that twisted through open grasslands, dry canyons, and forests that seemed endless. The sun rose and fell over the horizon, painting the sky in colors that few people ever noticed. To Jack, this was home. It was silent, wide, and free. But it was also lonely. He had lost his parents when he was very young, and life had taught him to rely only on himself. Friends were rare, and he trusted even fewer people than that. He carried a small pack with the few things he needed: a canteen, a knife, some dry food, and a worn blanket. His horse, a strong chestnut mare named Daisy, was his closest companion. She understood him in ways no human ever could. Together they had crossed rivers, climbed steep hills, and faced storms that could sweep away the careless. Yet Jack had never faced anything like the feeling that hit him one late afternoon as he rode along a narrow canyon path. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of dry earth and wild sage. Birds were quiet, and even the crickets seemed to have stopped their evening song. Jack slowed Daisy down, listening carefully. It was then he heard it, a faint cry. At first he thought it might be the wind or a small animal, but then he heard it again, a sound that was human. Jack guided Daisy off the main trail, moving carefully down a small slope. His eyes scanned the rocks and brush. That's when he saw her, a young girl, lying half hidden under a low tree. She was very small, maybe not more than 12 or 13, and her clothing was torn and dirty. Her face was pale, and she was breathing in short, shallow gasps. Blood had dried on her arms and legs, and it was clear she had been hurt badly. She was alone. Jack's heart tightened. He had faced many dangers in his life: rattlesnakes, storms, bandits, but nothing had prepared him for this. The girl was in serious trouble. He could not leave her. He dismounted slowly, keeping his movements calm so as not to scare her. Daisy nickered softly, sensing his tension. "Hey there," Jack said gently, lowering himself to the ground. "It's okay. You're safe now." The girl's eyes opened slightly. They were dark and full of fear, yet there was something else too. A quiet strength, like she had survived far more than anyone should have to at her age. She tried to speak, but only a weak whisper escaped her lips. Jack realized she could not stand on her own. She was too weak. Without hesitation, Jack carefully lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but fragile, and he had to support her entire body. Daisy nuzzled his shoulder as if understanding the importance of this moment. Jack knew they had to move quickly. The canyon was isolated, and anyone could come along the trail, friend or foe, and he couldn't risk leaving the girl in the open. He mounted Daisy slowly, keeping the girl pressed against his chest. Each step was careful. The rocks were uneven, and a sudden stumble could hurt her more. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the canyon. Jack's mind raced. He had to find shelter, water, and help, but he also had to be smart. If anyone saw them, they might not understand why he was carrying a wounded girl through the wilds. As they moved, Jack tried to communicate with her. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked softly. She shook her head weakly. "It's okay. We'll figure that out soon." Her breathing was shallow, and Jack felt her tiny hands clutch at his shirt. She was scared, but she trusted him enough not to fight. That small trust made Jack's chest tighten with a feeling he had not felt in years. Protectiveness, concern, something like hope. It all mixed together, and for a moment, He forgot the endless loneliness he had carried for so long. The path out of the canyon was steep, but Jack was careful. He knew every sound mattered. The snap of a twig, the distant howl of a coyote, or the rustle of leaves could mean danger. Yet, he also knew that standing still was not an option. Every second he delayed could make the girl weaker. As the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Jack found a small, sheltered spot under a rock overhang. It was not much, but it would protect them from the wind and any animals that might wander by. He set the girl down gently, using his coat to cushion her from the hard ground. She stirred slightly, a faint shiver running through her small body. Jack took off his own hat and tried to shade her face from the cooling air. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I've got you. You're not alone anymore." Jack knew he had to act quickly to help her. He searched his pack and found a small flask of water. Carefully, he wet a cloth and wiped the blood and dirt from her face. The girl flinched but did not pull away. He cleaned her wounds as best as he could with the small supplies he had. It wasn't much, but it was something. As he worked, Jack kept talking to her. "You're strong. You'll get through this. I promise." His voice was calm, even though inside he was worried. He had never felt responsible for anyone in this way. Not for a grown man, not for a friend, never like this. Night fell fully and the canyon became cold and silent. Jack wrapped the girl in his blanket, pulling her close to share warmth. Daisy lay nearby, her head resting on her front legs, eyes alert for any sign of danger. Jack stayed awake most of the night, keeping watch over the girl, listening to her shallow breathing. He did not sleep. He could not. As he looked up at the stars, Jack thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. He had spent years avoiding people, keeping his heart closed. But now, holding this fragile girl in the dark canyon, he felt a spark of something he had not allowed himself to feel in a long time. Care, maybe even love, in its simplest, most human form. The hours passed slowly. The girl's breathing remained weak but steady. Jack whispered stories of the plains, of rivers and horses, trying to comfort her. He spoke of the sunsets he had watched alone, of the adventures he had survived, of the dangers he had faced. The words seemed to calm her, even if she could not fully understand. When the first light of dawn appeared, Jack knew he could not stay in the canyon any longer. The girl needed proper help, and he had to find a town, a doctor, or anyone who could tend to her injuries. He lifted her once again onto Daisy and began the slow journey out. Every step was careful, every mile a silent prayer. Jack had always been a man of the open plains, used to solitude and danger, but in that moment carrying a fragile, wounded girl through the wilderness, he realized something profound. Sometimes, life could surprise even the hardest hearts. Sometimes, a person you never expected to matter could suddenly become your whole world. And Jack Rains, the lonely cowboy of the plains, had just found someone worth risking everything for. The morning sun rose over the canyon, casting golden light on the rocks and dust. Jack tightened the straps on Daisy's saddle, making sure the girl was secure. She stirred slightly in his arms, her small hands clutching at his shirt. Her dark eyes looked up at him, full of trust and fear at the same time. Jack gave her a soft smile. "Don't worry," he said gently. "We'll get you help soon." Every mile they traveled was slow and careful. The canyon trails were uneven and steep, and Jack had to navigate rocks and loose soil without letting Daisy stumble. The girl's breathing was shallow, and Jack had to pause often, letting her rest. He carried water in a small flask and used a cloth to cool her forehead. She did not speak, but her small fingers occasionally touched his arm, almost as if asking for reassurance. Jack thought about how fragile life could be. He had faced storms, wild animals, and even angry men, but nothing had made him feel so responsible. He had rescued her, but now he had to protect her on the long journey ahead. Every shadow seemed a potential threat. Every sound of birds or rustling bushes made him tense. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher. The trail led them into a small valley filled with dry grass. Jack noticed tracks in the dirt. Other travelers had been here recently. He studied the marks carefully. Some were from horses, others from humans. He did not know if they were friends or foes, but he kept moving cautiously. He wanted to avoid anyone who might harm the girl or slow them down. By midday, Jack spotted a small stream. He guided Daisy down carefully and let the girl drink slowly. Her lips were dry and her throat was parched. He poured water over her hands and face, trying to refresh her. She shivered as the cool water touched her skin, but it was a small relief. For the first time, Jack saw a faint color return to her cheeks. Jack spoke to her in a calm voice. "Almost there," he said. "Just a little further. You're doing very well." She looked at him with those deep, trusting eyes and gave a weak nod. Jack could feel her heart beating against his chest, fast but steady. He realized he had never felt such a bond with anyone in his life. She had no family, no home, and yet she had placed her life in his hands. That trust was sacred, and he would not let it break. The valley opened to a small hill, and Jack paused to look ahead. Beyond the hill, he could see a faint wisp of smoke rising into the sky. It was a sign of life. Someone had built a fire, perhaps in a small settlement or a ranch. Relief washed over him, but he knew the danger was not gone. The girl was still weak, and they could not risk traveling too quickly. He had to reach help safely. As he began to descend the hill, he noticed movement among the trees. A small group of men appeared, mounted on horses. Jack's heart tightened. They were far enough away not to notice immediately, but he had to be careful. He slowed Daisy and kept the girl hidden behind his coat. He studied the men from a distance. They did not look friendly, and Jack did not want a confrontation, especially with the girl in his arms. He chose a narrow path along the side of the hill, hoping to move quietly. Daisy's hooves made soft sounds against the dirt, but the men did not seem to hear. Jack guided her through a small cluster of bushes, using the natural cover to remain hidden. His pulse raced, but he stayed focused. Every step was careful, every movement deliberate. Finally, they passed the men without incident. Jack let out a quiet sigh of relief and continued toward the smoke. By late afternoon, they reached a small clearing where a family of settlers lived. Simple wooden cabins stood among the trees, smoke rising from a cooking fire. Jack slowed Daisy and looked around. He hoped they would help without asking too many questions. He approached a cabin and knocked on the door gently. A woman appeared, her eyes widening when she saw the girl in Jack's arms. "Please," Jack said quickly. "She is very sick and hurt. Can you help us?" The woman nodded and called for a man inside. Together, they guided Jack and the girl into the cabin. The settlers were kind and careful. They laid the girl on a small bed and began tending to her wounds. Jack stayed close, watching every movement, making sure nothing caused her pain. The girl's breathing was still shallow, but now she had water and some warm cloths. Jack felt a small wave of hope. She was safe for the moment. He finally allowed himself to sit down and rest, though his mind remained alert. He realized how exhausted he was. Days of travel, worry, and fear had weighed heavily on him, yet he did not regret any of it. Saving her life was worth every struggle. As the sun set outside the cabin, Jack noticed the girl beginning to stir. She tried to sit up, but her strength was not enough. Jack gently supported her. "Easy," he said. "Just relax. You're safe here." Her small hand touched his arm. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. She trusted him completely, and he felt a warmth in his chest that he had not felt in years. The loneliness that had been a part of him for so long began to fade, replaced by a quiet connection that he knew would stay with him forever. Over the next hours, Jack talked to her softly, telling her stories of the plains, of rivers he had crossed, of storms he had survived. He spoke of the animals he had seen, of sunsets and moonlit nights, of moments of quiet beauty in the world. The girl listened, her eyes occasionally closing as she rested. She could not speak much, but she responded with small gestures, nods, or weak smiles. Jack realized that saving her was only the beginning. He would have to protect her, guide her, and perhaps teach her about the world she had been separated from. Yet he also knew that in doing so, he would change too. Her presence filled a space in his heart that had been empty for years. It was as if her trust and vulnerability had opened a door he thought was permanently closed. Night fell fully, and the cabin became quiet. Jack stayed beside her, watching over her as she slept. He thought about the journey ahead, how he would need to find a doctor, or perhaps travel to a larger town. But he was not afraid. He had Daisy, the settler's help, and most importantly, the determination to see this through. He leaned back in a chair, glancing at the girl. She looked peaceful now, wrapped in blankets, and for the first time in days, her breathing was calm. Jack felt a strange mix of relief and pride. He had taken a great risk by rescuing her, but it had been worth it. Life had given him a purpose he had never known before. As he watched the stars through the cabin window, Jack made a silent promise to himself. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he would not let anything happen to her. She had survived so much already, and now he would stand by her side. Together they would face whatever the world had to offer. Jack did not yet know her name, or the story of how she came to be alone and injured, but that did not matter at the moment. What mattered was that she was alive, and he had saved her. And in saving her, he had found a connection, a reason to care, and a warmth in his heart that he had thought was lost forever. The first light of morning streamed through the small cabin window, falling on the girl's face. Jack stirred quietly, careful not to wake her. Her breathing was easier now, steadier than it had been when he first found her. She looked peaceful, wrapped snugly in blankets, but Jack knew her recovery was just beginning. He gently checked her arms and legs, making sure the wounds were clean and bandaged. She moved slightly, opening her eyes, blinking against the sunlight. Jack smiled softly. "Good morning," he said. "How are you feeling today?" The girl looked at him, and though her voice was weak, she whispered, "Better." Jack's heart lifted. It was a small word, but it carried so much hope. He had been worried that her injuries might be worse than they seemed, but now there was a glimmer of strength returning to her. He helped her sit up, supporting her carefully so she would not strain herself. "Take it slow," he said gently. "We're in no hurry. You'll get stronger little by little." Over the next days, Jack stayed by her side, guiding her gently through each small step of recovery. The settlers had given her warm food and clean water, and Jack helped her eat and drink carefully. He could see how much she wanted to stand on her own, to move and walk, but she was still weak. Every small accomplishment became a celebration. sitting up without help, taking a few steps with his support, even smiling when he told a story. Jack realized that caring for her was changing him in ways he hadn't expected. He had spent years alone, thinking no one could ever matter to him. But now, every smile, every nod, every tiny hand clutching his arm made his heart feel full. He had never known such a deep, quiet joy, and he cherished it. The girl began to speak in small phrases, telling Jack bits of her story. She was Apache, living with her family until she was separated during a raid by rival groups. She had been lost, frightened, and alone for days before Jack found her. Though her words were few, the story in her eyes was clear. She had suffered much, yet she had not given up. Jack admired her courage, and he quietly vowed to protect her no matter what. Jack knew the journey ahead would be long. They could not stay with the settlers forever. She needed proper care, and eventually, she would need a place to call home. But for now, their days were simple and safe. Jack took her outside for short walks around the small clearing. Daisy followed closely, her ears flicking at every sound. The girl laughed softly when she felt the breeze on her face, or when Daisy nudged her gently with her nose. It was the first real laugh Jack had heard from her, and it filled the cabin with warmth. One morning, Jack decided to teach her a simple skill he had learned on the plains: how to use a small rope to tie knots. He showed her patiently, guiding her tiny hands. She struggled at first, but Jack encouraged her with gentle words.
There, like that. You're doing very well, he said.
Slowly, she began to understand, and her eyes lit up with pride when she tied her first knot without help. Their bond grew in these small moments. Jack shared stories of the plains, of animals he had encountered, and of adventures he had survived alone. The girl listened intently, asking questions with her quiet voice. Jack answered with patience, realizing that teaching her and sharing these stories brought him a sense of family he had not felt in decades. One afternoon, while sitting under a tree, the girl looked up at him with a serious expression. "Why did you save me?" she asked softly. Jack paused. The question was simple, yet the answer was not. He thought about the long days and nights he had spent alone, about the emptiness he had felt. Then he looked at her, so fragile yet so strong, and realized the truth. "Because I couldn't leave you," he said honestly. "No one should be alone like that. And because I care about you." The girl looked down at her hands, shy and quiet, but Jack could see understanding in her eyes. That small connection, a mix of trust and gratitude, strengthened their bond even more. Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. He realized that life could still surprise him, that even on the lonely plains, love and friendship could find a way. As the days passed, the girl's strength improved. She could walk short distances without Jack's help, though he stayed close in case she stumbled. They explored the clearing together, collecting wildflowers, watching birds, and listening to the soft hum of nature. These moments were simple, yet they brought joy and laughter that Jack had almost forgotten existed. One evening, Jack noticed her looking toward the horizon where the sun was setting in brilliant orange and pink. "Do you like the sky?" he asked. She nodded. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Jack smiled. "It is. The plains are full of small wonders like this. Sometimes you have to stop and notice them." The girl leaned slightly against his shoulder, and for the first time, Jack realized how much her presence had changed him. He had always been a man of action, moving from one place to another, keeping his heart closed. But now, with her near, he felt the quiet peace of companionship. The loneliness he had carried for years began to fade, replaced by warmth and purpose. The settlers noticed the change too. They saw the care and dedication Jack showed, and they respected him for it. They offered advice, healing herbs, and kind words, but Jack politely declined most of it. He wanted to be the one to guide her recovery, to teach her, and to protect her. That was his role now, and he accepted it wholeheartedly. One day, as Jack helped her walk to the stream, they saw a small family of deer grazing nearby. The girl's eyes widened with excitement. "Look," she whispered. Jack smiled and knelt beside her, letting her observe the animals quietly. He taught her to move slowly so as not to scare them, and she followed his instructions carefully. When the deer bounded away, she clapped her hands softly, her laughter echoing through the trees. Jack felt a swell of happiness. These moments were precious, simple, and yet filled with life. Evenings were spent around a small fire. Jack taught her songs he had learned from other cowboys, simple tunes about the plains and rivers. She tried to sing along, her voice soft but growing stronger each day. Jack realized that her laughter and curiosity were filling a part of his heart he had thought was empty forever. He began to feel like life was not just about surviving anymore. It was about sharing, teaching, and caring. One night as they sat under the stars, the girl leaned against Jack and whispered, "Thank you." Jack looked at her, his eyes reflecting the soft light of the fire. "You don't have to thank me," he said gently. "I'm glad I found you. We'll face everything together from now on." Her small hand found his, holding it for a moment. Jack felt a warmth spread through him, a quiet sense of purpose that he had never known. He realized that saving her had not just been an act of courage, it had opened his heart to love, hope, and connection. Over the next weeks, Jack and the girl continued to grow closer. She regained more strength each day, and their bond deepened through shared stories, laughter, and small adventures. Jack taught her how to ride Daisy safely, how to identify edible plants, and how to navigate the trails. The girl listened carefully, eager to learn, and Jack took pride in her progress. Through it all, Jack discovered a new kind of happiness, one that did not come from solitude or independence, but from caring for someone else. The girl, once fragile and alone, had warmed his lonely heart in a way he never imagined possible. By the end of this part of their journey, the girl was walking confidently, learning to speak more words each day and laughing freely. Jack watched her with pride and quiet awe. She was no longer the fragile child he had found in the canyon. She was strong, curious, and full of life. And Jack, a lonely cowboy, had learned that sometimes the bravest thing a person could do was open their heart to someone in need. The days grew warmer as spring approached, and the small clearing where Jack and the girl had stayed became a place of quiet life. Flowers bloomed along the edges of the trail, and the birds sang from early morning until sunset. The girl, now walking confidently, ran across the soft grass, her laughter carrying through the trees. Jack followed behind, careful not to let her stray too far. Each time she looked back and smiled at him, his heart swelled with pride and warmth. The girl had grown stronger than Jack had imagined possible. Her wounds had healed, and her energy returned. She was curious about everything: the plants, the animals, the skies, and the stars at night. Jack had taught her about the plains, how to care for Daisy, and even how to ride safely. She loved the freedom of the open land, yet she never wandered far without Jack's watchful eye. One morning, Jack packed a small bag with food and water. "Today," he said, "we will travel to a town where you can get proper care and meet more people who will help you." The girl looked nervous. She had never been around many people, and the thought of leaving the safety of the clearing made her hesitant. Jack knelt beside her. "It's okay," he said gently. You'll be safe. I'll be with you the whole time. You don't have to be afraid." The girl nodded, trusting him completely. Jack lifted her onto Daisy, and they began the journey together. The trail was longer now, stretching across rolling hills and past quiet streams. The sun shone warmly on their backs, and the wind carried the scent of fresh grass. Jack felt a sense of calm. He knew challenges might still come, but he was ready to face them, because he would not let anything happen to her. Along the way, they met travelers and small groups of settlers. The girl clung slightly to Jack as they passed, but he encouraged her gently. "See," he said, "the world is not as scary as it seems. Most people are kind if you give them a chance." Each encounter was a small lesson, a way for her to grow confident in the world outside their clearing. One afternoon, they reached the edge of a small town. Smoke rose from chimneys and the streets were filled with people moving about their daily lives. Jack guided Daisy carefully through the town, holding the girl close. He saw her eyes widen in amazement at the sights: the marketplace, the children playing, and the colorful tents and stalls. It was a new world for her, full of sounds and smells and colors she had never experienced. They arrived at a small clinic on the outskirts of town. A kind doctor greeted them, noticing immediately that the girl had been through a great ordeal but was recovering well. Jack explained everything: the injuries, the journey, and the girl's courage. The doctor nodded, understanding the gravity of what Jack had done. "She is very strong," the doctor said. "With proper care and rest, she will thrive. You've done an incredible job." Jack smiled, though his heart was heavy. He had grown attached to the girl during their journey. The thought of leaving her, even for her own good, felt strange. But he knew this was the right choice. "I'll visit her," he promised. "I won't leave her alone." The girl looked up at Jack with big, trusting eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack knelt beside her and held her hands. "You don't need to thank me. I'm proud of you. You are brave and strong. You have a bright future ahead." Days turned into weeks as the girl rested and received care at the clinic. Jack visited her often, bringing small gifts: a flower, a drawing, or a story from the plains. Each visit was filled with laughter, learning, and quiet conversation. Their bond grew even stronger, a bond built on trust, care, and shared experiences. During one visit, the girl told Jack about her dreams. "I want to help others," she said softly. "I want to be brave, like you, and take care of people who need help." Jack felt a warmth in his chest. She had endured so much, yet her heart remained kind and strong. "You will," he said. "You already are." As time passed, the girl regained full strength and confidence. She learned more about the town, met other children, and began to laugh freely, without fear. Jack continued to guide her, teaching lessons about life, courage, and kindness. Each day, he realized that her presence had changed him as well. He had gone from a lonely, wandering cowboy to someone who cared deeply for another human being, someone he would protect at all costs. One sunny morning, Jack and the girl took Daisy for a ride outside the town. The girl laughed as the wind rushed past her face, her hair flying in the breeze. Jack held the reins gently, keeping her safe while letting her enjoy the freedom of the ride. They rode past fields of wildflowers, over gentle hills, and along quiet streams. The world felt wide, beautiful, and full of possibilities. After returning to the town, Jack and the girl sat under a tree near the clinic. She leaned against him, smiling. "I'm glad I met you," she said softly. Jack smiled back. "And I'm glad I found you," he replied. "You've brought more joy into my life than I ever thought possible. You've warmed a heart that I thought would always be lonely." The girl nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "I feel safe with you," she said. Jack squeezed her hand gently. "And I'll always keep you safe," he said, "no matter what." As the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Jack reflected on their journey. They had faced hardships together, from the dangers of the canyon to the uncertainty of the town. But through it all, they had grown stronger, braver, and closer. The girl had not only survived, she had thrived, and Jack had found a new purpose in life. In the weeks that followed, the girl's confidence grew. She learned to speak more freely, to express her thoughts and feelings, and to enjoy the world around her. Jack continued to teach her, but he also learned from her the courage to hope, the ability to trust, and the simple joy of connection. One afternoon, as they walked through a quiet meadow, the girl stopped and looked at Jack. "Do you think we will always be together?" she asked. Jack knelt beside her and smiled. "Yes," he said. "We will face the world together. You are my friend, my companion, and someone I care about very much. We will always look out for each other." The girl smiled, feeling safe and happy. For the first time since her ordeal began, she truly believed in a future filled with hope, friendship, and love. Jack knew that their journey was far from over, but he also knew that together they could face anything. As the years passed, the girl grew into a strong, confident young woman. She never forgot Jack, the cowboy who had risked everything to save her life, hours and vocals. And Jack, once a lonely wanderer, had found a family and a purpose he had never known. Their bond remained unbroken, a testament to trust, care, and the power of kindness. Jack often thought back to the day he had first found her in the canyon, weak and alone. He realized that by risking his life for her, he had not only saved her, he had saved himself from a life of emptiness and solitude. In helping her, he had discovered the true meaning of courage, love, and companionship. And as the sun set over the plains, casting a warm glow on the land, Jack and the girl, now strong, joyful, and full of hope, looked toward the horizon together. They had faced the dangers of the world, survived hardships, and grown stronger for it. The once lonely cowboy and the once fragile girl had found in each other something far greater than survival. They had found heart, home, and a bond that would last a lifetime.